My husband and I moved into this small upstairs 2-bedroom apartment shortly after we were married. It was a beautiful old Victorian house, and the owner, a widow, lived downstairs in the rest of the house. We only lived there for about 1 to 2 months. A few weeks after we had moved in, I woke one night and was completely petrified. I was absolutely terrified. My heart was in my throat, pounding like it would jump out of my chest. Of what? I don't know. I can only describe it as an overwhelming feeling of evil. I saw nothing. I woke my husband up and told him we had to leave the house right now. He looked at me like I was crazy, of course. It was around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He must have saw the urgency and seriousness on my face, because I wouldn't even talk about what I was feeling. I just held on to him and insisted that we leave and drive somewhere, anywhere, before I said a thing, which we did. I then explained to him what had happened. He believed my feelings were sincere, but I had no details, just an overwhelming feeling of evil. Well, we moved out shortly after that, but I wasn't crazy. Almost 3 to 4 years later, still living in the same town, a girl came to work at the company that I worked for. She was the daughter of the widow who had lived downstairs of that creepy apartment. Oh, what a small world. We chatted along nicely. Then I told her what had happened that night, and wasn't it insane? She looked at me. Her face went pale, and she swallowed hard. "What month did you say that happened?" she asked me. "June." "Why?" She then proceeded to tell me about her brother. Her brother had committed suicide many years earlier, in the bedroom that we slept in. It was over a girl. He had shot himself with a rifle, and it had been a June night. It still gives me the creeps when I think about it. Thanks for reading. I'm only writing now that I've moved into a new house. I've lived in 2 houses where I've had things happening. The first house I lived, things would disappear. As soon as you put it down, you would turn around and it wouldn't be there. I would be home late at night by myself, and the phone would keep ringing. When I went to answer it, no one would be there. After about a half an hour, I would usually unplug the phone. Well, one time when I did this, it still continued to ring all night long. Only once did I have the nerve to pick it up. Dead silence. The other house I've lived in, the most recent, I had a lot of things going on there. When I first moved in, I was doing some stuff around the house and decided to put some shelves into a closet that is in a bedroom in the basement. While I was hammering, I could hear someone or something knocking on the wall. This wouldn't have been so bad if I knew there could be someone on the other side, but being down in the basement, I knew it was on foundation, and after that, a lot of dirt. It just kept going knock, 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 always in threes. Needless to say, I ran out of there. When I went back down the next day, it had luckily stopped and never happened again. Most of the things that ever happened in the house were usually in that room, and I unfortunately was the only one who ever had any problems. I would go down into the room, which eventually became my bedroom. It would smell cigarette smoke, as though someone had just been in there, smoking. No one in my house smokes. I could have put it off as one of the kids sneaking one, except it happened a few times when I was home alone. I would get woken up in the middle of the night by someone shaking the bed, or picking up a corner of the bed and letting it drop. One night, it felt as though someone was under the mattress and sticking their finger up, pushing the bed up. The worst stuff, though, started happening when the landlord was considering moving back into the house. I would wake up and feel terrified. It is hard to describe just how scared I was, but I've never felt more scared in my entire life. I wouldn't be able to move, only my eyes, and I would never see anything around me, just the normal shapes that were around the room. The worst night though that happened was on the night we were supposed to have left. I woke up to a growling noise and what felt like an arm being pushed down across my neck. I've since found out that the landlord's wife had passed away in the house, though I don't know what the basement room had to do with it. That was added on after she had died. I'm lucky enough to have gotten moved out without any more things happening, and I'm praying that the new house is entity-free. Thanks for listening. I hesitate calling this a ghost story because I don't know what it was. It could have happened by normal means, but they would have been odd circumstances. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was walking down Harbor Boulevard in Costa Mesa, California. Harbor is long, and it's one of the streets that borders Disneyland. The section I was walking along was almost exclusively commercial. I passed a woman with a bruised face and a Universal Studios baseball cap with a logo in shiny silver letters, walking the other way. A few blocks later, I passed her again, going the other way. I think I may have smiled at her this time. A few blocks later, I passed her a third time, still walking the other way. I should point out that I was just walking. I never stopped to look into a store or restaurant. I was maintaining a steady pace. While I am no race walker, I have about an average walking speed. I'm not extraordinarily slow. After the third time I turned around, I don't want to exaggerate. I didn't whirl around by any means. I probably kept walking about another 10 steps, saying to myself, this is kind of weird, and maybe stop for a brief moment to think about this. When I turned around, she was gone. There was a Polo Loco restaurant right there. I was in there and saw no sign of her. I went and looked down the nearest cross street. Again, no sign of her. As I say, I don't claim this a ghost story. I just claim this a weird event that happened to me, which is possible to explain through natural causes, but would be an odd circumstance. Yes, she could have gotten a ride, or had driven, but in that case, why would I have passed her on the sidewalk each time? Wouldn't she have driven or gotten a ride exactly where she was going, rather than half a block farther? If you have any light you could shed upon this, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Over the past 50 years or so, many members of my family have had interesting ghostly experiences. None of them have been particularly frightening, though. Here are a couple of those experiences. These take place in Vancouver, British Columbia area. About 15 years ago, my grandmother was chopping cabbage up for supper one evening and accidentally cut her finger with a knife. As she was running her finger under the cold water tap, she distinctly heard a voice saying, "I've told you to be careful with knives, Kitty." The voice was that of her Aunt Neil, who had died 40 years previously. She was always scolding my grandmother for something or the other. Another experience happened to my aunt. 20 years ago, she and her family moved into a gorgeous 4-bedroom house in a wonderful area. The house itself was about 2 years old. After a while, she would find things missing. She put a brand new packet of knitting needles on the kitchen shelf, and when she'd go to get them, they'd be gone. But anything else on the shelf was then on the floor. Her daughter was at school, and her infant son was way too young to climb up there. The knitting needles turned up in the bath of all places. It was this moment then, when she thought there was a spirit in the house. She was even more convinced when she heard singing up in her daughter's room. She went up there and found no one. That night, my cousin refused to sleep in her room. A little while after that, Auntie went upstairs to check on the baby. As she looked in the cot where Andy was fast asleep, she swore she saw a woman's hand gently stroking his cheek. She calmly told the ghost, "He's asleep. Please don't wake him up." The ghost left. The ghost also likes to crash my aunt's parties. If guests were over, she'd come downstairs and join in. The only people who knew she was there were my aunt and my grandmother. I had only one experience with a ghost. I was babysitting one evening and was watching TV in the family room. All of a sudden, the dog perked up and started wagging its tail. I knew it was her. I said, "Come in and sit down," and continued to watch the TV. There were several other things that happened, but fortunately, the spirit was friendly and harmless. When my aunt moved out, she found out that the property where her house stood was once owned by the native Indians of the area and sold to the government in the early 1980s. My aunt thought that her ghost had darkish skin. Funny thing is that my uncle never saw or heard the ghost at all. There are many more stories to tell, but they'll come later. About 2 weeks ago, we were in bed watching TV. It was around 9:30 to 10 when we heard footsteps, kind of like our kids had gotten out of bed. Well, I got up and checked the kids, but they were still in bed sleeping. I went back to bed. About 5 minutes later, it happened again. This time, it sounded like it was running downstairs. My husband grabbed his gun. I went in the kids' room, and they were still sleeping. Vince said everything was locked up, so no one was in our house. We couldn't explain what happened, so we went to sleep. 5:45 in the morning, my daughter, who was 7, came in mumbling to me until I told her to calm down. She said it felt like someone was at the end of her bed and pushed her mattress, and in doing so, she heard her springs go up, like someone was on the bed with her. She was looking for her cat, which was asleep in her room. Now, we've been in our house almost 4 years now. Our house is a brand new home of about 5 years old. I started thinking about something that has happened in our house that I mentioned to my husband. I told him, "Remember a couple of times we had been gone all day, and when we came home, I smelled a man's cologne, very strong in some places?" I also told him it wasn't his cologne. So here I was thinking that someone had been in our house. Yesterday, September 22nd, 1999, I was home by myself, watching TV downstairs. It was about 11:30 a.m., and I could have sworn my son, who is 6, was home in his room walking around, but he was at school. No one but myself was home. I went upstairs. Nothing was there. Today, September 23rd, 1999, I got home around 10:30 a.m., went upstairs, and there was a smell. I'm sorry I can't describe the smell, but all I can say is it doesn't smell good. Now, this smell took me off today because we had the smell prior from today. The strange thing about it is, only happens once in a while, and it usually smells strong in the hallway in my daughter's room upstairs. You would think a pungent smell like that would smell up the other rooms, but it never does. Every time I try to find where the smell comes from, there's never a pinpoint spot. Does anyone have any comments that they can help us with? How can we actually tell if we have some kind of paranormal activity going on in here? What we have experienced right now seems strange and definitely unnormal. Thank you. I actually have 2 stories, and I'm not sure I would call them ghost stories or not. Perhaps they are angels, but nonetheless, they happened and are not necessarily related. When I was in high school, I was madly in love with a guy 2 years older than me. I was a senior, and he was graduated and in the Air Force. He was my first love. Shortly before my high school graduation, I had made tentative plans to visit him at his base in Mississippi. I called him with my plan. he was less than thrilled. It was during this call that I found out he was seeing another girl, and we broke up. I was utterly devastated. I kept the pain to myself mostly. Nobody really knew how terribly it affected me. I was beside myself with my heart. A couple of days after we broke up, I was in my bedroom upstairs. I heard my mother call my name from the bottom of the steps, and she sounded very strange. She said, "Come down here. You got some flowers delivered to you." I went to the kitchen, and my mother looked utterly baffled. I was convinced they were from Dan, and he wanted me back. The bouquet was huge and beautiful, with roses and exotic flowers and greens. It was obviously a very expensive arrangement. I opened the card and it said, "What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly." Signed Anonymous. I asked everyone I knew if they sent the flowers. Nobody owned up to it. Nobody. My mom tried to call the florist. The florist said that the only thing they knew is that it came in FTD, which meant that it wasn't local. To this day, more than 15 years later, I still don't know who sent those flowers, but I somehow like to believe that they were a gift from an angel. The second story happened this past year. Both of my parents died this past year, both unexpectedly and very young. My mom died of a burst aneurysm in her heart, and my father died of complications of a heart bypass surgery. She was 59, and my father was 62. After my mom died, strange things began to happen. The first thing was the night of the first funeral home visitation. I was at that time at home, writing a letter to my mother to be placed in her casket to be buried with her. My sister and father were at my parents' house getting dressed when my sister, who was ironing in the basement, heard an extremely loud crash come from upstairs in the kitchen. It made her jump. She said she had been thinking about Mom. My dad, at the time of the large crash, was standing in the bedroom trying to decide what suit to wear. He said that he was thinking, no, I shouldn't wear that suit. Yvonne, my mom, wouldn't like that. My dad and my sister went into the kitchen. Above the kitchen sink was a window that my mom had filled with crystals and stained glass pretties that were suction cupped to the window. My mom's favorite was of a blue stained glass oval of an angel praying. It was that glass ornament that had fallen into the sink and made the crash. Those ornaments had been there for years and never fell into the sink, but they did this day. 2 days later, I had to attend a doctor's appointment. My mother and dad were leaving to meet the funeral director, and I was leaving for the doctor. I stopped and said, "Shoot, I don't have money for the copay, and I'm running late. I don't have time to stop at the bank." My sister gave me the money for it. On the way to the appointment, I realized that, shoot, I was meeting a friend for lunch, and I still don't have any money. I thought to look in the console of my car, but I knew there would be no money there. I never have money in my car. I looked anyway, but when I opened the lid, there sat a $5 bill. Odd, but I was so glad to see it. I didn't think too much about it until later, when I thought hard about it. I didn't leave that money there. That same day, my sisters and nephews went to my uncle's pharmacy and Hallmark shop, where my mom had worked also. My mom had always bought Beanie Babies for my nephews from there. My nephew was looking for a specific beanie, and I'd been unable to find it for months. That day, they found it at the shop. My uncle didn't remember ever seeing that one before, and he took care of the ordering. A few days later, I was sleeping. I was exhausted from the funeral and was taking time off from work. Nobody was home. The window was open, and I was dozing peacefully when I heard quite clearly, "Carrie, Carrie." I sat up, and my heart was pounding. I heard my mother. She was calling me, as if I wasn't supposed to be sleeping, like she always used to do if she thought I were oversleeping. One of the things that my mom always did when she was alive that annoyed me was to yell my name from the bottom of the steps. I heard it so vividly that morning. I want to say it was in my head, but it woke me up, and her voice was as clear as day. My bedroom was the entire length of the top floor of a Cape Cod house. I had my own smoke detector up there. From that day on, whenever I would get really upset about losing my mother, that silly smoke detector would beep. Beep, 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 beep. I changed the battery. Beep. But it happened only when I was upset, or thinking of her. The crystals on the phone began to fall off regularly, where they never did before. The phone in the kitchen, which had a speakerphone function, would click on its own violation when someone was on the telephone. It happened about 5 times. That too had never done that before. Suddenly, everything just stopped. No more odd happenings. Then my father went into a coma. Several friends from out of town were staying at the house and keeping a vigil with us at the hospital. One evening, everyone was at the hospital, but a friend of the family named Jenny. She had heard the stories of my mom's hauntings and the smoke detector going off. She was reading a book, alone in the house, and the smoke detector in the downstairs hallway started going crazy. Jenny got up, walked into the hallway, looked up at it and said, "Miss Harley, we aren't ready to let Don go yet. You can't have him. Is that okay?" The minute she said that, the smoke detector beeped one more time, and it never did again. It completely freaked her out. Shortly after my father died, all strange happenings ceased little by little. They do not happen anymore. I wish they would. It was almost nice thinking that my mom and or dad were hanging around and watching us. Thanks for reading. Well, if it isn't Little Phantom here, why are you back? Because I had to come back to record and upload another video. Yes guys, I'm back from vacation. I can't talk, still slurring my words, but you know where the vacation was? It was in my bathroom. Did you know LA had a bathroom? It's called the bathroom. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Never mind guys, you know it's back when I can't make any sense. I'm back, honestly, what I was trying to say was that did you know LA was in my bathroom? And all I had to do was walk a few steps and there I am. You got the beaches and the toilets and you got... Okay, I'll just stop right now. But seriously guys, I definitely missed you. I know I commented later on and I know I was delayed in responses, but you guys still got them and I'm very thankful that I'm here actually being able to respond in real time to you guys eventually, you know, whenever you guys post a comment. So thank you again guys for holding on and being patient with me while I released those filler videos. Honestly, they were kind of filler videos I guess, but no, I'm really happy. Go ahead and comment, like, share, and subscribe. I've also been hearing that a lot of horror channels in the genre have been demonetized, and that's really awful. I mean, there's no way to remonetize because the YouTube standards are getting more difficult to, you know, monetize through AdSense. So make sure if you are supporting a channel that you really love, make sure they're getting paid for it. I mean, obviously, you don't have to. Make sure, you know, you donate to their Patreon accounts. Make sure that, you know, they're doing what they love to do and getting paid for it because, I mean, obviously, it's not your obligation to do so, but it really is demoralizing when you have someone who built up this account and they built up this channel and they made it what they did. And they did it through love, hard work, and labor. And for the money to be stripped from them, you know, that's just difficult. So guys, hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing happens to my channel. I really hope it doesn't, but I do have a Patreon just in case you guys want to donate. No pressure there. I'm just saying it is there if you need it. It's always in my YouTube description box. You know, no pressure, like I said. And guys, I'm going to end this with saying thank you. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being patient with me, like I said earlier. I'm just really thankful that you guys are sticking by my side. Love you very much. And I'm glad to be back, and I'll see you in the next video. And hopefully, I don't take any vacations anytime soon. Well, my wallet's pretty empty right now, but still, I'm still planning on visiting more places in the future, so when that happens, I'll make sure I tell you all guys about it. That made no sense. I'm slurring my words again. Who cares? Why would I edit it out? I know this is long. Everyone's like, oh, stop the outros, but you can always stop when the outro begins if you don't like the outros. Anyway, guys, good night, good morning, and I'll see you in the next video. Love you.